Have you ever noticed how the rain in Seattle doesn't just fall? It kind of has this way of blurring the whole world into these heavy, relentless shades of gray. Well, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really incredible, deeply inspiring journey about community, kindness, and just raw human connection. It's a story that kicks off in that freezing Seattle rain, but I promise you, by the time we're done here today, you are going to be feeling a whole lot of warmth. So, think about this for a second. Have you ever felt completely, utterly invisible in a city of millions? It's a really specific, honestly crushing type of isolation, isn't it? You're surrounded by all these bustling crowds, the towering skyscrapers, endless noise everywhere, and yet you feel entirely unseen. Well, this is exactly where our story begins. That gray, invisible feeling, it perfectly mirrored the internal world of a 24-year-old woman named Maya. Okay, let's dive right into this. Section 1, Clouds of Despair, Maya's Reality. Because to really appreciate the light in this story, we've got to understand the heavy, suffocating clouds that were hanging over her first. Picture this. Just 3 months prior, Maya was absolutely full of hope. She had packed her entire life into a rusty Honda Civic and drove all the way from Ohio. She showed up armed with a degree, this massive dream of working in architectural design, and exactly $800 in her savings account. But fast forward to the present, and wow, the reality of the city has hit her like a ton of bricks. Because as it turns out, dreams don't pay the rent. After dozens of rejected job applications, actually probably closer to 100, her bank account is down to her last $50. She's surviving on instant noodles, shivering in this tiny drafty apartment, and literally staring down the barrel of an impending eviction. So, defeated, freezing, and just completely exhausted, Maya steps out into that unforgiving Seattle rain one evening. She just needs a momentary escape. And that desperate need for shelter leads her to Chapter 2, A Ray of Hope, Miller's Diner. She pushes through the doors and imagine the immediate sensory relief. The harsh, freezing rain is instantly replaced by this warm, dimly lit refuge that smells like old wood and fresh, rich coffee. Maya sits down and orders the absolute cheapest thing on the menu, just a simple cup of black coffee. The owner, an older guy named Arthur with these really kind eyes and a faded navy apron, brings her the mug. But Arthur is observant. He sees her damp clothes. He spots the dark, exhausted circles under her eyes. And he catches a glimpse of her open notebook, which is just covered in desperately crossed out budget numbers. He doesn't say a single word. He just turns around and walks back to the kitchen. A few minutes later, he comes back and silently sets down this massive, steaming bowl of chicken noodle soup and a thick slice of warm homemade sourdough bread. Maya kind of panics. Her cheeks flush red as she admits she absolutely can't pay for it. But Arthur, he just smiles softly, pulls out a chair, and says, "On a night like this, nobody should just drink coffee. It's on the house, kiddo." The warmth of the steam hits Maya's face, and she just breaks down. She starts to cry. But she isn't just crying because she's starving. She's crying because, for the first time in months, she finally feels seen. And as the tears fall, Arthur slides a napkin across the table, looks at her gently, and gives us the emotional anchor of this whole story. He says, "The rain always stops. Sometimes it just takes its time." Now, what's really interesting about this next slide is how it flips the script. Part 3, A Shared Struggle. Arthur's story. We always assume the wise mentor figure, the guy handing out free soup and life advice, has it all figured out, right? We assume they're the saviors. But as Maya sits there eating, she discovers that her savior is actually drowning too. Arthur starts to open up. He tells her the history of Miller's Diner. 40 years. For 4 decades, Arthur and his wife, Martha, poured their absolute hearts into this building. They built it together, mixing decades of love, military discipline, and real community spirit into every single cup of coffee they served. But then, the story takes a really heartbreaking turn. 3. It's been exactly 3 years since Arthur lost his beloved Martha to cancer. This beautiful, hand-carved diner with all its vintage lighting, it's not just a business to him, it's a memory capsule. It is literally the absolute last physical connection he has left to the love of his life. And the tragic part is, that connection is hanging by a thread.
Arthur looks around the empty booths and confesses that while people used to come here to feel like they belonged, business has totally dried up. These massive corporate chains are just squeezing his small independent shop right out of existence. He admits with a super heavy heart that he'll probably have to close his doors for good by the end of the summer. Sitting there, Maya has this profound realization. That crushing feeling of being invisible, Arthur feels it too. Suddenly, her problems aren't just hers anymore. It's a completely shared struggle.
And right then, Maya's entire vibe shifts. She isn't just a freezing, defeated girl anymore. She has a purpose. That brings us to Chapter 4, Digital Revolution and Change. Arthur fed her when she was at her absolute lowest, and she resolves right then and there to pay him back.
And this brilliantly illustrates how she did it. Maya realizes she can use modern tools to save this incredibly authentic place. Now, Arthur is a guy who still proudly uses a flip phone, so he totally laughs at the idea of going online. But Maya, she's a digital native with an eye for design. The very next day, she brings her laptop in. Step 1, capture the aesthetics. She takes these stunning, high-contrast photos of the golden sourdough, the blueberry pies, the steam coming off the coffee. Step 2, tell the story. She doesn't just post food pics. She writes about Martha. She writes about 40 years of community service. She puts the very soul of Miller's Diner on the internet. And step 3, go digital. She posts this short, captivating video of Arthur kneading dough at 4 in the morning and titles it The Last True Corner of Seattle. Now, for a few days, it's crickets. Nothing happens. Maya keeps applying for jobs. Arthur keeps baking in the quiet diner. But then, Thursday morning hits. Maya's phone starts buzzing like crazy. The video hasn't just been seen, it's exploded. It went completely viral across the Pacific Northwest. People were just so moved by Arthur's dedication and this intense nostalgia for a real American diner. When Maya shows up at noon, there is an unbelievably diverse crowd waiting out in the drizzle. We're talking college students, high-powered business executives, and old neighborhood locals. The line is literally wrapping around the entire city block. Maya fights her way through the front door and walks into just joyous, absolute chaos. Arthur is working the grills, sweating bullets, but he is grinning wider than he has in years. Maya immediately grabs an apron, jumps behind the counter, and yells over the loud sizzle of bacon. "Need a hand, Arthur?" His eyes are just bright with joy, and he shouts back, "I need 10!" And together, they pull off this triumphant, totally exhausting, beautiful 12-hour shift side by side. Get this. By the end of that single week, Miller's Diner is completely booked solid for the next 2 months. The business is officially saved. So the storm has finally passed. The frantic energy settles into this steady, prosperous hum. And that brings us to Section 5, a new beginning, the aftermath.
You know, the universe has a really funny way of balancing things out. About a month after that crazy, triumphant week, Maya's life transforms just as drastically as Arthur's did. She finally gets the call, a full-time design job offer at a top architectural firm in the city. Her days of rationing instant noodles and stressing over eviction, officially over. So on her very last day before stepping into her new corporate career, she goes back to the diner for one final visit with Arthur. Arthur greets her and hands her a small wrapped box. Inside, Maya finds this beautiful leather-bound notebook and a gleaming golden key. His voice cracking just a little bit with emotion, Arthur tells her, "The notebook is for your new designs. And the key? Well, this diner will always have a seat with your name on it. You saved my life, Maya." They share this huge hug, because at the end of the day, it wasn't just a struggling business that was saved. They had fundamentally saved each other from the isolation of that massive city. As Maya looks out the window of the bustling diner, she notices that the Seattle rain is actually still falling. But it doesn't blur the world into shades of gray anymore. The world outside looks incredibly bright and just completely full of hope. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to think about your own journey for a second. Who was the Arthur in your life? Who handed you that warm bowl of soup when you were out in the cold? And honestly, perhaps even more importantly, look around you right now. Who can you be an Arthur to today?